Hey everyone, and welcome to the August edition of 3030. I am Pat Reinhardt from Conductor, and as always, thank you so much for spending 30 minutes of your very valuable time with me here today. So, what are we talking about? Not that it's super hot out here in New York, and also not that it's been raining for the last few days, which is really sad, but at the same time, there's other things happening in the search industry. So let's talk about that, because that's what the program's about, right? So, number one, we will have another discussion about Google's volatility and how that has continued to kind of roll on. So we'll definitely be going through what I've been seeing around the industry, around some conversations I've had with folks and things of that nature. We are going to talk about Google SGE quite a bit today and how they are testing out links within SGE, and it's about damn time, everybody. You know, this was something that a lot of folks in the SEO community were clamoring about, that that Bard was just taking, it's just appropriating content as Google does, but not giving the proper citations in the SGE box. So excited about that, and we'll talk about that a little bit. We are also going to talk about some more things around SGE. A lot of stuff was actually just announced, some new features, and I have also seen some things in my travels, that I've seen, SGE kind of doing a little bit differently since launch. So I'm going to go through that, give you my opinion there. We will also talk about something, that was a big piece of news over the last couple of weeks, which is how FAQ and how-to rich results will now only be reserved for authoritative government and health websites. And that, normal folk like you and I and our websites, we probably, we won't be, we probably won't, be eligible for this moving forward. So we'll talk about that a little bit. I'm gonna, show some examples of some more visual features in the SERPs that Google has started to roll out and has started to test that a couple of people have caught out in the wild. And then I will spend whatever time I have left complaining to all of you about how much I hate Google Analytics 4, which I'm sure as I've talked to people across the industry, most people have that opinion, but I want to give you mine, but that'll probably only be a couple minutes. But let's get into it, because we only have 30 minutes. Number one, Google continues to be extremely volatile, although this past week, it has started to cool off a little bit since about August 10th. So say over the last 6 or 7 days, it has actually cooled off and has chilled out. So if everyone remembers, I mentioned this last time around, that on July 14th, Google just went up and to the right as far as volatility goes, and it stayed there. So as you can see here, this graph, the volatility here has persisted throughout the month, throughout about a month's worth of time. And just to remind everyone, and some folks who this may be your first time here, Google, this is SEMrush's volatility sensor, and I actually included advanced web rankings as well, just to show the similar trend across two of the bigger volatility trackers and indexes. SEMrush actually changed the way that they calculated volatility about, 6 or 7 months ago. And that's so that's because it was always this volatile, right? It will always be, it was always that volatile. So back, so a year from now, this chart that is red here would have been like up here. It would have been at like a 15. So that tells you how much Google has changed over the last, like I said, 6 or 7 months, as far as how much they're testing, how much they're pushing out into the, into the SERP. How much they're tweaking things. As I always say, they're turning the dial up, they're turning the dial down. But at the end of the day, this summer, great comment, and I agree with you. This summer, it has been hot on the volatility scale. So what does that mean? To me, that means that Google is testing something or tweaking something previously rolled out. This time around, my gut tells me, and again, I have no insider information on this. This is just what I believe is happening, that Google is testing something that they are going to roll out either by the end of August or probably early September, which could be another core algorithm update. This could have something to do with SGE. It's interesting because throughout the last month, there hasn't been a lot of like page 1 movement. It's been a lot of movement from page 5 and beyond. That's where I saw most of it, outside of the last week. The last week, there's definitely been more page 1 movement, but ultimately, still not a lot, that it's like, oh my God, like, the doomsday commenters are out there being like, oh my goodness, like, this is like not, this is not what's, this is killing my site. There's been more of that chatter over the last, week or so, but for the last 30 days, the 3 weeks previous to this one, there hasn't been a lot of that. It's just been a lot of movement, but not necessarily on page one. But the biggest spikes that were particularly volatile were July 26th and August 3rd and 4th. And again, everything's been pretty hot since August 15th, but those were 2 days that a lot of people like started emailing me, asking, hey, is something happening because I'm seeing XYZ in my site. But again, it wasn't for any particular vertical. It wasn't for any particular type of site. It just is kind of all over the place. But as everyone knows, I do not believe in unconfirmed updates. Like a lot of people talk about, well, there was definitely an unconfirmed update from Google. I don't think Google does that anymore. Did they used to? Absolutely. But do they do that now? I don't think so. I think what they do is, again, this was either them testing something and that they're about to roll out and they're just getting a lot of data back for it, although this would be a tremendous amount of data that they're getting back because they've kept it so high for so long. Or again, that they're just tweaking a previous update that's going up or down. Now, what could this update be that's coming? My guess is that it's the update to the helpful content update that they announced when they launched Perspectives. So what that is, again, that basically what that update kind of takes care of is that content has been deemed helpful by there's authorship around it, it's authoritative, and it is content that is truly trying to help people and not made for search engines. This has been Google's kind of guiding light over the last few years, I would say, is that this has always been their guidance, but I feel like they've really doubled down on that with with EEAT. And the more and more that people are talking about that and paying attention to that, so just something to be aware of. But to look into, so as I say every time we go, every month rolls around, I go through a couple of hundred accounts. I go into our database as a whole, and I'm just looking for examples of any volatility or anything that's happening that that is pertinent. So breaking it down to a couple of different verticals here. So always do finance and retail, because I think finance is always a good barometer for your money or your life type situations. And retail is just good to see like the changes in the SERPs, and a lot of retail sites are very prone to, to movement when these things happen. So as you can see, over the last few months, here, over the last month or so, there's definitely been more movement than there was the previous, week. And a lot of this really happened in the last week. You can see a little bit of an uptick here and here. Again, this is a lot of keywords because this is, the keyword counts in the millions. This is still, thousands of keywords that are moving here, but more movement onto page one and not so much movement in pages 5 and beyond. Those are actually pretty stable this time around in these two verticals, but as you can see, page one has definitely changed, and also the amount of keywords ranking as a whole. Moving on to real estate and healthcare. Healthcare, again, you see a similar trend here where, really the July to August, movement, you can see that there was a lot more page one movement here. And of course, like the number of keywords ranking as a whole, but there was more page one movement from, over the last couple of weeks. And then looking at real estate was actually a tick down. And these are examples that are representative of what I was seeing as a whole in that vertical and across large swaths of that. So take into account, like, what should you do? That's the question. Like, what should I do? All this stuff is happening. There's nothing you can really do because no one really knows what's going on. No one knows, like, is there a core algorithm update on the way? Is it the update to the helpful content update that they promised us, quote unquote, in months, in the coming months, when they launched the Perspectives filter on mobile? I don't know. But there's definitely something a little bit more real happening right now. Like the previous weeks, like this was just weird that you were seeing all this volatility, but you weren't seeing a lot of people complaining about their sites, taking a dump or anything like that. It's more that there was just a lot of movement, but it was in later pages. And now as we get to here, as these two little spikes hit, you're actually these little ups and downs here. You're actually starting to see a lot more page one activity. So keep that in mind as we go along here. My guess is Google will be announcing something. So take that into account, right? Take that into account that, I believe something is coming. I think everyone in the industry thinks and knows something is coming. As I showed last month, John Mueller did tweet or X something out. I'm not really sure what to call Twitter anymore. They sent something out that said, I'm sure we'll release something, and then he said, like, cue the countdown. So from that perspective, I would imagine in the next 30 days or so, we're probably going to see something roll out. from Google that is actually announced and not just them tweaking or getting data back. So keep that in mind as we go along here, because there's definitely something up. And the last week in particular has been more real than the previous 3 weeks. So keep that in mind. So let's move on. Let's talk about SGE. I'm having a good time with SGE, and I'm excited about a lot of the changes that they are making, right? But the big one, the big thing that a lot of folks have been talking about in the SEO industry is that, okay, so we have this huge box that takes up the entirety of the SERP, basically when you put a query in, and the only links are these 3 links, on the top right-hand side, but all the content that people are reading, there's no citations, there's no credit given to the site where they're pulling that data from. I'm happy to say that Google has definitely listened here, and they have started to test out these links now, that where you can, when the generative AI box pops up, you can hit the arrow down and it will give you the links to where they are, getting that content from. This is a huge win for SEOs and for for search in general, because, like the big question is, okay, so this box exists, right? Like, what does ranking mean going forward, right? Like, what does ranking mean, right? And I think from that perspective, there wasn't really a good answer. It's like, well, okay, so this box shows up. It doesn't show up all the time, by the way. It's showing up in, I don't know how. I've heard back and forth that, oh, they're only going to show it for 15% of the queries. Oh, no, it's going to be more like 60% of the queries. Whatever the percentage winds up being, it doesn't really matter. It's more that when this thing shows up and, content is being taken from your site, what is, like, why can't we get credit for it? So this is a win for all of us. And I think why is it good for everybody is that, listen, like Google has been appropriating our data and our content for years. It's my entire career is based off of this. But from that perspective, but Google always gave credit, because the 10 blue links, that's credit, right? It's like, okay, like we are, we're here to index, and to organize the web. But at the same time, they always gave credit to folks, even though they got worse about that as time went on, as they started to create new SERPs based on clicks that was just taking data from your site, and then they just created more SERPs so they could serve more ads and things of that nature. But that's how that goes. But I think this is a good development. I actually like the experience. But in short, it's a path for the users to your site, and it's good that there's a path for the users in your site, right? And just to kind of look at how it looks like live. So here's the box generating, right? And you can see here that when you click on the links down here, you can see that the accordion's open and the sites are there. And again, I think this is a good compromise, but it makes you wonder. No, again, what will this do to click-through rate? Showing up, in different areas of that content is going to show different things. Obviously, there's going to be different click-through rates for all of these links. So it's like, oh my God, it's not really like, are these the new 10 blue links? Like, is this what it's going to be like? Like we'll have to report on this, right? Like Conductor as a platform will definitely have to, report on where everything is falling right now, along with every other tool out there. But from that perspective, it's something to take into consideration that while this is a great win for SEO and for search in general and for the SEO community. But again, when this launches globally, this is going to have a lot of, this is going to create a lot of messiness and a lot of interesting changes in the SEO industry and how tracking works. So I am looking forward to it, honestly, because again, like this reminds me of when like Panda and Penguin rolled out in 2012, like both 2011, 2012, and that really changed the entire way that SEO was done. We're at another inflection point here. We're at another change, moment in this industry. And I think that it's going to be good for us, honestly. I do think it's going to be good for us. So this was a good thing. And honestly, while we're talking about SGE, there have been a lot of new things. So I actually just showed a screen of something new that you've probably seen if you're using SGE, that there is this little show more, button that you can press now that expands the AI box, right? So when you look at that, that's been pretty interesting to me because now the generative box doesn't take up as much real estate, right? And for anyone who doesn't know what SGE is, I apologize, and I just saw a question here. SGE stands for Search Generative Experience. So what that is, and what you're looking at here, Google will be rolling this out to search, to the SERPs in general, and this is them including Bard or AI into the search landscape. So it's going to change the way that the SERP looks by adding this box. But ultimately, they are iterating on it as people use it more and as they're getting more data back. But I think that this is also a win for SEOs, because if this is just the room that it takes up, if this is all the room that it takes up, then, and we have to hit show more, that means that there is more of an opportunity to see the standard SERPs, or the standard results, as I would call them. So that could be a win too, just from a real estate standpoint. Question here, same as Bing too. So Bing Chat is different than Bard, but it's the same theory, right? It's them including AI in in their search experience in many different ways. And that could be where Bing Chat has a Copilot thing, which Google actually just rolled out. It just announced a version of that, which I'll show you in a second. But really, it's just the ability to chat with a bot that helps you filter your SERPs in a bigger way, but also create, generating this box that gives you an answer, but it's data that's appropriated from everywhere within their index, and then putting, smart insights on top of it, which they will more than likely use to sell more ads. So from that perspective, getting back to this, I do believe that this is a win as well for SEOs, because I like that this doesn't take up as much room, but you still have the ability to expand it, and then you have the link. So I think it's been a good week in SGE for for SEOs, right? Another thing that I've noticed, and I actually saw this on Search Engine Roundtable as well, which is where I pulled I pulled this query from. They're starting to incorporate video within the box as well. I have seen local results like the map, in the SGE box. I have seen, I've seen images. I have not seen video until this, but it's not surprising that they are starting to incorporate this into this experience. But it will be interesting to see that if this exists here, will they still have a video carousel below this, above it? What happens to those types of results? Do they just not show it? I had the same question, for anyone who joined last month. Or it might have been 2 months ago, where I was showing the same thing for the map pack, right? So within the search generative box, there was a map pack, but then below it was the exact same map pack. So it was the same thing with answer boxes. It's like they had the answer that was in the answer box, but the answer box was below the search generative experience. So it's kind of like, it's very redundant. There's a lot of redundancies in all this. So it'll be interesting to see what they do, that if a video shows up here, my guess is they're not going to show video results below this, or they'll just have more video results that you can scroll through here. Again, I don't know, but it would be it would be interesting. It could be interesting. And I do see another question. It would be nice if you could go over getting started with Google Ads. Unfortunately, I am an SEO strategist and I cannot help you with paid ads, and I would give you terrible advice on how to get started. But I can definitely, if you want to reach out to me separately, I can put you in touch with some folks that can help you with that. So moving on from there, some new things that were, announced about SGE. So as you can see in this, in this image, there is a Copilot type thing here called SGE while browsing. So this is very similar to Bing and Bing Chat's Copilot, where you can actually, while you're on the page, you can ask questions about data on the page. So you can actually, this isn't about search in general, it's when you're specifically on the page, and you can go in and ask questions and ask it to, summarize the page, ask about, like again here, like what year did they start Route 6? You can ask specific questions about this article. This is super new. This is brand new. And it only works on, I think they said select pages at the moment there. This is totally in the test phase. But I think this is super cool. I like the Copilot feel. It's interesting that they're doing it on the website and not in the SERP. So that's a little bit of a different, kind of flair to it, that Google's doing. But as you can see, as the image scrolls through or the video scrolls through, it's when you do click on a question, it highlights where in the article that is. purple, which again, as you can see there, it highlights it. Again, this is building on, one of my favorite features that they have, that they came out with over the last few years, which was the passage-based ranking, which is where you Google something very specific, you click on the result, and it jumps you down and highlights where in the article, the answer is for you. So this is all building up on that, and I think this is a really cool innovation. I'm looking forward to messing with it and seeing if it is worth it, and does it really make sense. The next one is definitions, which is pretty cool as well. So here you can see that when the generative AI box does pop up, there will be certain words that will have a line underneath it that you can highlight, and it will actually define those words for you and sometimes even give diagrams on what it all means, which I think is super cool. Again, this is another way that Google is moving in a more visual direction. Anyone who joins the program on a regular basis knows that, Google, I've talked about this at end, Google's very nervous about the kiddos, starting their searches 40% of the time on TikTok and Instagram. And what you're seeing here is a lot more of the Google experience becoming more visual. And this is another example of that. I love this. I think it's actually really cool. It'll be interesting to see from a definition standpoint where they'll actually pull this from. It's probably not going to be available for normal sites. It's probably going to be for like Wikipedia and like highly authoritative sites like dictionary and things of that nature. But I think this is another cool, cool innovation. Question here, how do we get that feature? So so if you join Google Labs, so in the upper right-hand corner of Google, you will see this little beaker. You can click on that and sign up for SGE and enter the beta. It sometimes takes a couple of weeks, but then you can get access to a lot of these things that they're testing. Like right now, when I Google something, I see the search generative experience. So from that perspective, something to think about. So moving on from SGE, how we doing on time? We got 7 minutes. You can do it, Pat. So big piece of news this month, was that Google announced that FAQ and how-to rich results are now going to be reserved for authoritative government and health websites only. So what this means is that a lot of you here probably have schema markup on your site, the how-to schema markup and the FAQ schema markup on your site. And what's happening here is that for those specific types of queries, you would have the ability to get a rich result that was, specifically around FAQs or specifically around how to step-by-step things. That is not going to be available to most of us anymore. Now, what it means from there is that for FAQ rich results, these will only be shown for well-known authoritative government and health websites, as I said before. A lot of people asked me about this week, saying like, "Hey, am I one of those websites?" The answer is probably not. So this is probably, you're going to see sites like Healthline, WebMD, Wikipedia, things of that nature, or any .gov sites. Those are the sites that they're going to be looking for here. So that's something to recognize. For the how-to rich results, a very important detail here is that Google is removing these from mobile search results, but they will continue to show them on desktop results. So take that into account as well, is that the how-to will only be shown on desktop, right? And when is this starting? This has already happened. As you can see, and as everyone knows, I follow Glenn Gabe. Glenn Gabe is a really smart consultant, does really good, breakdowns of updates and things of that nature. He was showing a couple of screenshots of, kind of these rich features, kind of dropping off the map and pretty much going to zero. So this isn't something that Google is going to roll out, over a period of time. This isn't something that is going to be like, oh yeah, by next year, this will roll out. This has already happened. So if you were enjoying any FAQ or how-to results, you no longer are, most likely. Apologies. Where can you see if you were? Maybe you don't even know that you were. But you can go into Search Console, Google Search Console, and you can look at the performance report, and then you can put the filters on, for the search appearance, for the how-to and for the FAQ, and it will show you what that has looked like for you over time. But from that perspective, one thing to note, because I got a million questions about this, of course, Google changes something and everyone's like, well, what do I need to do something? You don't need to do anything, because especially do not remove the markup from your site. There's no benefit for removing the markup on your site. I actually see, I actually see a question here. It's not beneficial to remove the FAQ markup, but it's also not beneficial to add them to new pages. Correct. Like, there's no reason to go back to your site and start removing things just because it's not there. Just because you're not going to get the rich result. There's no benefit to you removing it, and you might break something anyway. So don't worry about removing it. But moving forward, again, unless you feel that you're eligible for this, which most of you probably are, and most of us aren't, there's no reason to add them moving forward because you're not going to get that rich result. The only reason I can think of that you would want to add them moving forward is if you feel that it will, it's another data point, that Google can use. But for the most part, you're not going to get the main benefit out of it anymore. So I don't think there's any reason to do anything moving forward, to be frank with all of you. So just keep that in mind moving forward. Again, it's your site, YOLO, do what you want. But at the end of the day, I don't think there's really anything that you need to do. Moving on, a couple more slides, a couple more talk tracks. So next thing, again, more visual features that people are starting to see out in the wild in Google. I actually came across an article on Search Engine Roundtable. And again, when we send out the deck, I implore you all to read the articles and go to the links that I provide to kind of see it and walk through it yourself. But folks around the industry are starting to notice more and more kind of visual-led experiments. The ones that you're seeing to the right on top is somewhat of like a card, kind of card-based, kind of SERP, which is interesting, which we've seen on mobile before, but I haven't seen it on desktop displayed in quite this way. So it's really interesting that someone got this to pop, for happy birthday wishes, and it's really interesting because it's all different sites, but it's more of like a card-based system, which is more Instagram-y, and things of that nature. And if you look below, you can also see that in the top stories, again, that card system is there, and it's a lot. It's carousels, but it's a lot more visual. There's images. It's not just blue links. And again, I think you're going to continue to see a lot of this moving forward. You're going to continue to see more and more of this from Google. But from that perspective, just keep that in mind that, I'm going to keep reporting when I see more visual aspects, but, Google is definitely heading in a more visual direction to appeal to their future audience, which is, younger generations. So that will impact us. But again, this is not a bad experience either. I don't particularly like the cards in general, but it's not horrible. But at the end of the day, it's more visual and it's, kind of easier to browse through, in my opinion. Other question, any sense on how to land in the SGE box? Not yet. No one can answer that question yet because it's really unknown. I've said this, in episodes past where I believe that specificity will be the key to the success of your SEO program moving forward so that you do wind up in those links that are citations in the box when it does show up. But again, that's just speculation, and just from what I've seen and the types of queries and types of experiments I've done, the more specific the content, the more often that you will see it kind of pop up in there. But from that perspective, that's a very cursory, kind of analysis, and we would need months and months of testing and to kind of figure that out. Before I said this is exactly what you should do. But ultimately, a lot of the tried and true SEO methods will continue to work. But I think it's more about not just like answering questions broadly or creating more broader content. It's more about really being specific about it, and ultimately having that article or whatever you're creating tied back to an authoritative entity, whether that is your brand or it's a person within your brand. So think about that moving forward. And then lastly, 1 minute left. Everyone, I cannot stand GA4. I've learned how to use it. I've done it. I know that there is good benefits. We had a comment before. It's not bad if you linked it to BigQuery. You can slice and dice however you like it. 100% if you know SQL, 100% on that comment. But I think it is, and I think this, there's actually another comment here that I agree with wholeheartedly. Phenomenal analytical power, 100%. Crappy UX experience. It's a crappy UX. I don't understand why they got rid of just the general channel reports. I think they made something that was very easy to use and very easy for a layman to go in and use, and made it like a very high end type thing, which is very difficult for a day-to-day person who may not be in it every day to use. So from that perspective, I just had to say that out loud, and I just needed to say it out loud. But with that, we talked a lot about algorithms today, but the only algorithm that matters is the heart, mind, and soul of your customer. If you create great content, they will come back to you because they love it and they like it, and you'll have a customer for life. So we do office hours the Tuesday after this program. Thank you all so much for coming. On Tuesday, August 22nd, we will be doing it at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. I will be in San Francisco, so I will be on the Pacific time as well. And with that, everybody, thank you so much for spending 30 minutes of your very valuable time with me. I know I say this every time, but this is my favorite part of my job, and I would not be able to do it without all of y'all. Thank you all so much. I hope you have a great rest of your summer. Grill, have all the drinks, drink them all, and I will see you next month.